Hello, welcome to the supplement to the main message. So this is some sort of follow-up, backgroundy kind of stuff. It's not the main message for March the 21st, but it's an attachment to it. You need to pay attention to the main message first if you would. Um, could I invite you to have a Bible to hand, open at the last book of the Bible, Revelation 17. We'll not be very long in that chapter, but I think we'll start there. If you don't have a Bible, you might like to pause this now and just go online and read Revelation 17 and 18, possibly 19, but 17 and 18, if you would, at least parts of it. And I'm just going to read a bit for you now. We've already covered the rider on the white horse. We did that last week. That's from Revelation 19. I'm looking this week at Revelation 21 and 22, the final vision. But because, as I said in my main message, there's the need to get something of the vision of the alternative city, the counterfeit city, the contrasting city called Babylon. So I know you've listened to the main message, so you've got this, but when Revelation is talking about Babylon, it means Rome and or all systems of government or power wielding that are unfair, unjust, self-centered, and create harm as they exercise their power for self-interest. So Babylon is like that because empires are like that. Babylon was the place where anciently the people of Israel had been exiled, and Babylon therefore represents, is symbolic of being separated from where God is and from God's city, being removed from where Jerusalem was the centre. So what John's vision is doing is it's using an Old Testament account of life under Babylon to represent all that is unfair, unjust, and against the ways of God in the world at any time. And when the people of Israel were captive in Babylon, they were separated from the holy city, the center of Israel's life, Jerusalem. So Jerusalem, it already was happening in the Old Testament, actually becomes the symbol of God's ways, of a kingdom that is more than Israel, of the kingdom of heaven, the eternal kingdom of God. And the term Jerusalem, which actually refers to God's peace anyway, becomes the symbol of the kingdom of heaven as taught by Jesus. So that's what's going on in Revelation. We're not talking about actual ancient city of Babylon or actual ancient Jerusalem, and we're not therefore talking about actual details of final events on planet Earth and actual physical details of heaven, which lie beyond the imagination anyway. So the first city is Revelation chapter 17 and 18. So I'll just very quickly read a couple of excerpts from that. Um, so the city of Babylon described this way for the purposes of Revelation, symbolically, chapter 17, verse 3, the angel carried me away in the spirit to a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast covered with blasphemous names, with 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand. Now, golden bowls have represented prayers of the saints, but in this case, golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. This title was written on her forehead, Mystery, Babylon the Great, Mother of Prostitution, of the Abominations of the Earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. So this woman on the scarlet beast is going to be in contrast to the city we've not yet been introduced to, which is the holy city, the New Jerusalem. And Babylon is about to hit the problem. But John's vision goes on to describe how Babylon is linked to all kinds of injustice, persecution, and so on. Anyway, for chapter 18, after this I saw another angel coming down from heaven. With a mighty voice he shouted, and in verse 2, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She's become a home for demons, haunt for every evil spirit, every unclean and detestable bird. For the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the sea grew rich from her excessive luxuries." It goes on. The picture is very clear. It's that of the kind of political or economic empire building done by countries or corporations that produce what is detestable to God, which is the persecution of the righteous, the unbridled greed that seeks luxury for the centre of power, creating poverty in other places, all kinds of unjust economic and political and power behaviour. Babylon is the persecutor of the church, and the Church of Jesus is the opponent of Babylon. So we need to get that city image in our mind, remembering we're not talking about actual city of Babylon. Babylon is being used symbolically. Flip over now, if you would, to the different city, the counter to Babylon, and that is in Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. So there's this contrasting image of two cities, and a further, or double image then, a further image of each city as a bride. One is unfaithful, the other is faithful. One is untrue and deceptive, one is true and honest. One is greedy and self-indulgent, siphoning off luxury to herself wherever she can find it. The other is gracious, compassionate, and filled with the light of the presence of God. One is the bride of evil, so to speak, and one is the bride of Christ. And so we just need to get that, if we're going to understand how the closing vision of Revelation works, we just need to make that short trip to Babylon. Let's now fill in some of the details. So I'm reading at chapter 21, and I'm just going to go through the sequence of things. The vision, this end vision, sees the new order, the recreation, as it were, moving from heaven to earth. So this is a very different approach to thinking about heaven when I die because I'm good or because I've given my life to Jesus or whatever it is. This is heaven coming to earth. It's very like the incarnation of Jesus. This isn't the whole gospel. This is one of the many images that John is using in the book of Revelation. And here is what, whereas anybody looking at the figure of Babylon as the bride would go, well, very off-putting, very self-centered, very untrustworthy, in fact completely unattractive actually once you look through the luxury, whereas the New Jerusalem has all the qualities that reflect the presence of God. And it goes on in verse 3, so the dwelling of God is now with people and he will live with them. Heaven has come down to earth, God will live with us. They will be his people and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. There's a number of different ways of translating some of that, but whichever translation you use, the general sense is pretty clear. Then he who was seated on the throne said, I'm making everything new. Behold, I make all things new, or whatever. And then comes a proclamation, it's complete, it's done. And with the resurrection of Jesus, actually, we are in a position to say, well, effectively, the battle, the war is decided. The battles are not over, but the war is decided. I am the Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. And whoever is thirsty, come and drink. It's an invitation which is picked up in the very closing verses. This invitation, come and be part of this thing. Don't stay attached to Babylon. You're just wasting your life with stupid luxuries you can't take with you, with stupid, selfish, fear-filled prejudices, hatreds, conflicts, competition. Forget about it. You're just wasting your life on stuff like that. Invest in what lasts forever. The bride of Christ, the holy city, the New Jerusalem. That's your address. That's your belonging. That's beautiful. That is glorious. That is worth everything you have, even, and John was writing to people who could face this, even if it costs you your life itself. Quick look at some of the details here, because it's just helpful. I kind of covered this a little bit, but it was quick in the main message, and I just want to quickly do that, to do some of it again. In his final vision, then, he's carried away, having seen this coming down from heaven, this renewal of all things. He's now moved into a new phase of that vision, in which he gets to look round heaven, so to speak. He's not looking around the physical details of actual heaven as it is in eternity. Rather, it's full of the symbols, and there just isn't time to go for it. But the pearly gates are there. Everything is made of what is regarded as precious and special, which can be set aside as sacred and holy. The thing that's really striking about the city is its immensity, and the lack of a temple. Here's God saying, this is the best city ever. There's not even a worship centre in it. Well, why not? Well, because God is everywhere in it. There is no longer any separation. The dwelling of God is with people. There is no longer a need for any kind of special gathering place or anything like that. The paved with gold, the high street, and all those things. The tree of life is there, the river of life is there. It's as if John is trying to gather together in the final vision these central themes, some of which have been there since Genesis chapters 1 and 2. And it's simply a description of an inclusive, generous, free, peace-filled place, and it represents what God gives us in God's self, which is God giving us God's self forever, God sharing God life with us always, God sharing God's values with us always, us sharing God's values always, us living always in, through, and with God. In other words, it's not really a study of the last moments of planet Earth, and it's not really a study of the architecture of heaven. It's a study of what matters. And in the end, what matters is not the place where God is, but God, who is beyond all place. I cannot imagine, and neither can you, what eternity with God is really like in any detail at all. All we need to know is that God is love, God operates justice, fairness, freedom, and all that we know to be good. That is our address, the holy city to which we belong, to which we are loyal, and for which we live, whilst Babylon still has its day for now. God bless you. Please do read the book of Revelation much for yourself. If you have any bits that you're going, oh, I just need somebody to talk to about this, I'd be very happy to respond. Send me an email or a message or something, and I'm happy to talk. Next week, we're on to Mary Magdalene over Good Friday and Easter. God bless you and keep you safe.